We have huge challenges facing our state and nation. But in order to address them, we absolutely must acknowledge our interdependence and that we're in this together. It's not uncommon to hear folks disparage those who are different from us based on either who they are or where they live. But I'm here to tell you today that whether you live east or west of the Continental Divide, whether you live in a city or in the country, whether you just moved here or whether you have ancestors stretching back millennia, whether you're single or married, whether you're gay or straight, we are one Montana, bound together by our love for this place and our need to depend upon one another. Woo! So as one Montana, how do we ensure a prosperous future for all of our fellow Montanans? For me, it boils down to one word, one simple word: stewardship. Stewardship of the land, stewardship of the public trust, stewardship of our cultural heritage, and stewardship of public investments. Stewardship is none other than caretaking, taking care of things that really don't belong to us individually, but which we share in common, like the air we breathe and the responsibilities which we're entrusted with. The land. There are few things I believe more important in life than being a steward of the land on which we depend. As a lifelong hunter, fisherman, and conservationist, I'm committed to ensuring that our federal government embraces a land ethic that values clean air and water, wild places, and productive agricultural lands. We talk a lot about how we need to achieve energy independence, and I couldn't agree more. But besides simply talking about expanding domestic energy production, important as that may be, and I put gas in my car and I flip on the light switch in my home, which all requires energy, how about if we return to something that my parents, and probably many of your parents out there who grew up during the Depression, taught us: use less. That's both a progressive value and a conservative value. It's a Montanan value, and it's the definition of conservation. In Congress, I'll fight corporate interests that treat Montana as a mere colony to exploit, leaving those of us who live here with Superfund sites to clean up for decades into the future. Not only should we adopt a long-term view of land management and utilizing natural resources in a sustainable manner, but we should work to restore those landscapes that have been degraded over time, either as a result of neglect or outright contempt. Without stewardship of the land in Montana, across America, and around the globe, we squander the birthright of all future generations on this planet. Montana is the ecological crown of the continent, so let's work together to keep it that way. Absolutely. And you know what? Contrary to some of the rhetoric that you hear, there is no inherent contradiction between a thriving economy and a healthy environment, and as your representative in the U.S. House, I'll propose legislation that ensures both. Woo! The public trust. It's time for renewed stewardship of the public trust. Not only does this mean being a good steward of public funds and taking necessary steps to address the crushing national debt that hangs around the necks of future generations like an anchor, but it also means restoring some dignity and decorum to the U.S. Congress, which seems to take a beating on a virtual daily basis. As a former wildland firefighter, and as someone who traveled to Washington, D.C. in 2002 to grieve with thousands of others the death of 343 firefighters who were killed at the World Trade Center, I can guarantee you this: I will not be suing any fire departments in the state of Montana as your congressman. Another aspect of being a steward of the public trust is simply keeping our promises, recognizing the sovereignty of Indian nations, keeping Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid solvent and strong, respecting workers' rights, and regardless of your view of foreign policy, making it a priority to support our military veterans. I didn't serve in the military, but I know many who did, including my father. The American military lives with a pledge to leave no one behind on the battlefield. Once they come home, it must be our pledge to leave no veteran behind, and that will be my pledge as your congressman. Culture. We must be stewards of our cultural heritage in Montana and across the nation. There's a sign over in Fort Benton that reads, "Industry is useless without culture." I couldn't agree more. As someone who has served for a number of years on the Missoula Public Art Committee, I'm committed to acknowledging the value of the arts and culture in our nation. This means enhancing civic engagement across our country. And you know, we think of ourselves as the treasure state here in Montana, but what does it mean to be the treasure state in the 21st century? I believe that it means more than simply clawing raw materials out of the ground. It must also mean valuing the treasure in the minds of our young people and the treasure in our state's rich cultural heritage and diversity. Let's fully embrace the ideals of freedom, liberty, and equality in Montana and make sure that no matter who you are or what you believe, you are respected and valued as a human being. And finally, as a steward of public investments, you can count on me to advocate for infrastructure that is critical to the social and economic well-being and health of communities around Montana. We've let many of our bridges and highways fall into a state of disrepair, either as a result of inadequate funding or bureaucratic wrangling. Many rural areas in Montana lack adequate internet service, and in order to compete regionally, nationally, or internationally, we need to invest in the communication infrastructure of the 21st century. So let's call a spade here today. Too often, the phrase fiscal responsibility is merely a thin veneer that masks individual and corporate greed that enriches a handful of individuals to the detriment of the broader public. We're not merely taxpayers or consumers, as some would have us believe. We are citizens, and the only way that we can ensure a bright future for Montana and America is to work together, chipping in to do together what we cannot do individually. So how many out there of you are tired of paying through the nose to buy a plane ticket to get into or out of Montana? Me too. So I think it's time for a little bit of competition. How many of you would like to maybe grab a cup of coffee here at the market, maybe right over there at Butterfly Herbs, walk through those doors right over there, board a train to Bozeman or Chicago or Spokane or Seattle? What do you think? Okay. We haven't been able to do that for over 30 years. But with escalating fuel prices, the need to look for greener forms of transportation, and simply the opportunity to provide our citizens and residents here in Montana with another transportation option, I'll be a champion of adopting a national transportation policy, a national transportation bill that is not just a highway bill, but that recognizes the importance of investing in all modes of transportation, including passenger rail. As your congressman, I'll ensure that the empire builder along the High Line remains strong, and I'll also advocate for the return of Amtrak service across all of southern Montana. Just as the road to the buffalo once crossed these green hills behind us, linking tribes west of the Continental Divide to the buffalo hunting grounds to the east, it's time to see ourselves as one Montana, stewards of this place, physically knit together by a transportation system that we can be proud of. You know, I deliberately chose this venue today because it embodies for me the type of vital, vibrant community that I believe is part of Montana's future. Small businesses and local farmers are selling their goods here today, locally. Public art enriches the human imagination and human spirit. The Missoula Downtown Master Plan, which I helped spearhead, was already and has already sparked millions of dollars of reinvestment in downtown Missoula. And we're standing out here under the open sky rather than in a stuffy conference room somewhere in the bowels of a hotel. We're under Montana's big sky. So again, why am I running for Congress? I'm running for those Montanans whose ancestry stretches back to the last great ice age, people who have suffered innumerable injustices and whose sovereignty must be acknowledged and respected. I'm running for those immigrants who came to Montana for a new start, for my German-Russian grandfather and grandmother who homesteaded south of Wolf Point, for my grandfather who in 1895 died way too young and is now buried in a cemetery in Butte. I'm running for my children and future generations of Montanans. I'm running because Montana has the opportunity to shine bright across the entire nation as a place of prosperity, vision, stewardship, and justice. We can only realize this vision with all of your help. This is not my campaign, this is our campaign to put forward a vision for Montana, for the nation. If you want to help and get on board, there's sign-up sheets and clipboards circulating around here that you can jump on the campaign with. I believe there's also someone out here signing folks up. Voter registration is ongoing. This is going to be a long process. We're in it for the marathon. This is not a sprint. It's going to be expensive, just putting gas in my car to drive around the state. I need your help, so please join in. I look forward to this adventure. You know, in firefighting parlance, there's a thing called an anchor point. It's a place that is solid and secure, out from which you build fire line. Today, this is our anchor point, from which we'll take our campaign across the state, from Pablo to Browning to Poplar to Lame Deer, from Glendive to Thompson Falls and all places in between. I invite you to join me on this journey to victory in 2012.